Hello, I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge, and thanks for joining another virtual town hall meeting done by Don Berwick. I'm very proud to be an early supporter of Don's, and Don's going to talk a little bit about the campaign, and then, of course, the most important thing is to answer your questions. But I did want to say, as an early endorser of Don's, I want to talk a little bit about why I decided to endorse Don. As someone that has been a legislator now for 12 years, and part of the Senate Progressive Caucus, I believe that Don is the boldest and most progressive candidate for governor in the race. I think he has the boldest vision for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, whether it's opposing casinos, whether it's his support for universal health care as a right, whether it's support for fair taxation. I think that Don has, again, the boldest vision for the Commonwealth. And we've got great momentum this week, of course, including the SJC decision allowing the casino ballot to go forward, which I think is something that clearly shows how many people are concerned throughout the Commonwealth about the issue of bringing expanded gambling into Massachusetts. So, going to have an opportunity to ask questions of Dawn. And of course, if you like what you hear, really need you to step up and volunteer, come to the campaign office, whether here in Cambridge or in Worcester. We hope you'd be open to donating money to the campaign, doing phone making, do whatever you can to add to this really strong grassroots campaign that's going on all across Massachusetts. So just remind people that if you do have questions, you want to submit them using the hashtag answers, or email your questions to townhall@berwickforgovernor.com. And now I'm going to hand it over to Dawn and talk a bit about the campaign and get to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. Let me just begin by thanking Senator Eldridge. As I've said a number of times since his decision to endorse me, I've just reflected on how important that is. He's a highly admired leader in our state government on the progressive agenda this campaign is about, and Jamie, it means so much to me that you're with me and been so supportive. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
I mainly want to hear from you what your questions are, and we'll try to field them and I'll answer them, but I want to give you a first brief remarks at first. Mainly, this campaign has momentum. We springboarded out of the convention as we thought we might, but we weren't sure, and here we are, virtually tying the Attorney General and the alleged front runner in delegate count. A lot of that has to do with the hard work that many of you did before and at the convention, and I'm deeply in your debt for that. We knew the momentum was growing as we approached the convention. We could hear it in our fundraising totals, in our volunteer counts, and in the reaction to the bold progressive ideas that this campaign is about: social justice, equality, compassion, and mapping that into real, effective, and bold goals. We're making real gains with the electorate. We can feel that also. But after all, we're still the outsider candidate, and it's going to be hard work now over the next couple of months, building up to the state primary on September 9th. So we have a lot of work cut out for us. We have to introduce this campaign and me to the voters of the Commonwealth more broadly, prove to them that I am the most progressive candidate in the field, and that I have the backbone and the strength to take on Charlie Baker. We do, but that's a case we're going to have to make. A lot of that's going to depend on your work. We need you now more than we ever have before to knock on doors, to call your friends and neighbors, and frankly to donate financially if you can, and to reach out to others to help us raise the funds that are going to be needed to allow us to support a field force and get our message out on the airwaves as the summer months proceed. We have the biggest field operation in the race and the biggest volunteer force in the race, but we have to keep growing it now. It'll have to grow exponentially in the coming weeks and months if we're going to win this primary. But we can do it. We absolutely can win the primary and the election, but we need your help. So what I really want to do this time is to hear from you, your questions, your feedback. How can we do better in your community? How can we work together better to make sure that this campaign does succeed? So I'm looking forward to getting your questions, and why don't we start, Jim?
Sounds great. Well, the first question comes from Stephen. Stephen asked, how will you pivot Massachusetts medical care towards triple aim outcomes?
Thanks, Stephen. Stephen's referring to Triple AIM, which actually comes from the work of the nonprofit organization, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, that I ran for 19 years. along about the year 2004, 2005, we defined a set of goals for the nation about what healthcare really needs to accomplish in order to serve the needs of the public. And we called it the triple aim, three things. First, better care, so that if you're sick, you need help, you have a heart attack, you break your arm, or you're well and need a checkup, you can be absolutely sure that the patient, that the care you get is the best you can find in the world. That it's patient-centered, it's safe, effective, timely, that it's efficient, that it's equitable. Great care. That's aim one. Aim two is don't get sick in the first place. It's better health in the population and a really effective care system and a really effective commonwealth in reaching upstream to the causes of illness, which are actually 4 times as important as health care in supporting your health. That's to do with physical exercise, with nutrition, with the threats in our environment. It has to do with poverty and inequity in society and violence on the streets. If we work on prevention, we can actually keep us from having to use health services because we're not sick. That's aim number 2, better health. And aim number 3 is lower cost, but not lower cost by withholding care, not lower cost by rationing, lower cost by making the healthcare system more sensible, more responsive, higher quality. When you buy a car and it's a lemon, you know that car's going to cost more. Well, it's the same in healthcare. When healthcare is wrong and it doesn't meet needs, it's going to cost more. The best route to making healthcare more affordable is to make healthcare better, more focused on the needs of the people it serves. That redesign of healthcare has been my work for 30 years prior to my going to Washington to run Medicare and Medicaid. And the correct aims are the triple aim: better care, better health, and lower cost. As governor, I'm going to focus on leadership from the corner office for the redesign of healthcare systems to better meet needs. We're going to be developing a healthcare system much more focused on primary care, on prevention, on mental health needs, on the substance abuse epidemic, and on the real needs of families. Not trying to keep hospitals full, but trying to keep hospitals as empty as they can be by having people home and well where they need to be. That's what I've worked on for decades. Part of that, of course, is the single-payer approach. Medicare for all, a payment system that makes sense, that consolidates payment in a single pool, that will allow us to remove waste and better address the needs of the public. As governor, I want to lead the state to be the first one in the nation that has a rational healthcare payment system that stands up for patients and doesn't waste money in endless rounds of paperwork and complexity. That's my plan.
Great. The second question, and before I mention, if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag Berwick Answers. Otherwise, you can submit your questions to townhall@berwickforgovernor.com. Question number 2 comes from Deirdre in Marblehead. How do you respond to criticism that your opposition to casinos will cost thousands of jobs in Springfield and elsewhere? Will your position cost you the support of labor?
Well, thanks a lot, Deirdre. Let's start first with the data. I mean, the reason I believe that is because the evidence shows that. There are over 20 states that have casinos. We know what happens in those states, and that is not generally job growth. It's losses to the economy. The losses come in the form of people who get addicted to gambling, lose their jobs, and leave the workforce. There's actually a study in Illinois that shows that the number of people who got addicted to gambling and basically entered this cycle of decay in their lives exceeded the number of jobs in the casinos. You add jobs and lose jobs. In addition, we know that casinos hurt small businesses. The data are very clear. It's about 1 job lost per year per slot machine. And remember, casinos make most of their money through slot machines. That's what they're going to be focusing on. Those are job killers, not job adders. In addition, we know that casinos bring in through their presence in communities that they don't really care that much about. They destroy small businesses. They hurt those communities. If you doubt it, go visit Niagara Falls, New York, and look at those boarded up shop fronts. So casinos, net, I don't think add jobs at all. And what the jobs they do bring are not the kind of jobs to build an economy on. That said, of course, we have to focus on job growth, and we have to restore opportunities to businesses to grow. That means bringing healthcare costs under control. It means investing in innovation, developing a school system that's better aligned with workforce needs. It means being a great place to work with a minimum wage, and then I think a living wage is where we should be headed. Earned sick time benefits, equality of pay for women and men, and support to businesses by reducing healthcare costs and by taking away regulations that really don't help. We can have a job growth strategy, but casinos aren't appropriately part of that. They will hurt the state. As far as labor unions go, I don't know what they'll do, but I think labor ought to support the anti-casino move because it will hurt their members. Some of them will become gambling addicted, and the excess cost that will be brought into the Commonwealth will be money drained that could be going into businesses. Every slot machine collects $300,000 a year that could be going to different uses and actually creating an engine in the economy, not a black hole into which people are pouring their money. That's not good for business, and it's not good for labor.
The next question comes from Inisel on Twitter. How can I convince people in my conservative town that your healthcare plan makes you the most fiscally responsible candidate?
Because that's where the money is. Fiscal responsibility to me it means that we are sure that every dollar, every taxpayer dollar, is spent exactly where it's needed to help people. That's why we use government to create an environment in which people can thrive. Now, when that money goes through the payments the Commonwealth makes to healthcare, which are about 42% of the state budget, over $14 billion, any nickel or dime that's wasted in that purchasing of healthcare by the Commonwealth is not responsible use of taxpayer funds. It's not fiscally responsible. It's not fiscally responsible to support a healthcare payment system in this state, the multi-payer system, that wastes about 10 to 15% of the healthcare dollar. Why don't we get that money back? Put it back in the public treasury, return it to laborers, return it to businesses, and not waste that taxpayer dollar. So I actually have trouble thinking of a more fiscally responsible position with respect to state revenue and the use of those revenues than to get healthcare complexity under control. The other thing to remember for those who worry about fiscal responsibility is that containing healthcare costs, for which single payer is a big piece, is a job creator. It restores money to businesses because just as healthcare is $14 billion, 42% of the state budget, it's the biggest drag on business. So come with me to the business bureaus and to the small business owners and to the large corporations and ask them the same question I do. What would keep you in Massachusetts? What would help you stay here? And they'll give you a list, but I'll tell you at the top of the list, item number 1 or number 2 is going to be get your healthcare costs under control because this is the most expensive state and the most expensive country in the world and we can't take it. We're going to go someplace with our jobs where the healthcare costs are under control. What I know from 30 years of work is we can have lower cost and higher quality at the same time if we redesign the care, and the single-payer system is the front door to that.
See, Ian asks, how do you plan on beating Charlie Baker?
I think Charlie Baker is vulnerable. He'll be tough, but he's vulnerable. Charlie Baker is an insurance executive. He's tied to an industry that he's going to have to explain some of the behaviors that industry is engaged in. He's tied to the Republican Party, and if you want to have a shocking evening, read the Democratic state Republican Party platform. Read what it says about women's rights, about reproductive rights, about marriage equality. He picked a running mate who signed that platform. So he's tied to an agenda that I don't think conforms to the progressive values that I'm discovering in this Commonwealth in resonance with this campaign. You've seen recently, checkered stories about what happened at the Republican State Convention. He's got some liabilities, but I want to run a campaign that's generally focused on positive messages, and I think the agenda I want to bring to this state with progressive values that really are bold: ending hunger, ending homelessness, ending poverty, healthcare payment that makes sense, Medicare for all. This makes a portfolio that I think is going to be the winning portfolio over whatever Charlie Baker brings to the table.
Heather asks, what do you see as the role nurses can play in your efforts at health reform in the United States?
Oh, it's central. I remember training as a doctor. One of the best pieces of advice I always got, I got from a mentor. I think it was the first day I was working in the hospital. They said, Don, just I have one piece of advice for you. Remember, you're always the guest of the nurse. It's really true. Nursing leadership for the continual improvement of healthcare in America has been thrilling to work with for me for 2.5 decades. I launched programs in the nation to reduce injuries to patients in hospitals, to make hospitals safer by tens of thousands. And I'll tell you, in the hospitals that succeeded, you always found nursing in the lead, taking the initiative. They know the patients, they know what's going on. So nurses are essential to the future of sound healthcare. Also, as nursing practice expands now with advanced practice nursing, primary care systems which use nursing skills to the maximum of licensure, these are thrilling changes, and I see great expansion for the nursing profession in a new role, a new expanded role in helping us create the integrated healthcare that we really want and need. So I welcome the support of the nursing community here. They, like I, know what the waste looks like in healthcare. I'm driven crazy by the complexity of this payment system. They don't want waste. They want to be able to spend their time with patients, and I'm there for them, and I hope they'll be there for me.
The next question comes from Jeffrey. Massachusetts uses 1.4 billion plastic bags per year, which are non-renewable resources. How do you feel about this issue?
I don't like it. I'm sitting next to the sponsor of legislation to get this under control. If you've seen those horrible pictures and reports about that area, it's in the Pacific Ocean.
Yes, that's right.
Say what?
Pacific garbage dump. Yep.
Say more about it.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, the bill itself would ban plastic bags in Massachusetts, and a major contributor towards fish life, sea life dying is getting caught up in these plastic bags in the Pacific Ocean. So it's quite a sight.
Yeah, I'm for that. Another chance to lead. Here's a state that can take environmental responsibility continuing more and more seriously, and I think this is just the kind of change that we can show the nation, make it work, and be better for ourselves and for our planet. Thanks for your sponsorship.
Absolutely. Next question comes from Tom and Quincy. How do you plan to accomplish your bold agenda with this legislature?
Two ways. One is with colleagues like Senator Eldridge. I've been endorsed by a number of members of the legislature who share this view of a progressive agenda. Senator Pat Jelen. The chairman of my campaign is Senator Sonia Chang Diaz, Representative Denise Provo from Somerville, Senator Dan Wolf, Senator Ken Donnelly. I've been a change agent my whole life. I've tried to bring really fresh and important new ideas into health and healthcare and communities for change, things that we could do differently and benefit ourselves and our posterity. When you're making changes, the key is change agents. It's people that see the future differently. They're trusted and articulate. They may be few in number at the start, but that's the nidus. That grows the pearl inside the oyster. That's how change starts. And I believe that legislators like are supporting me and others who don't support me yet, we can form a group within that legislature that really wants to carry the ball forward towards social justice as a primary mainstay agenda of this Commonwealth. I would love to do that. My managerial style has always been open door. I promise this legislature that anyone that wants access to me will have it, and that we're not going to do this with surprises. It's going to be working through with those who share these values in common the best route to get there. That's answer one. Answer two is grassroots. This is a grassroots campaign. The only way I can win the corner office, and the way I will win the corner office, is by mobilizing the sentiments of the public widely. And I don't just mean people who call themselves progressives. I mean people who share a much larger community in the state of people who have progressive values, no matter what they call themselves. Values that say it matters how we treat each other. The government can be an instrument for making our communities better. That justice matters. That we still have problems like poverty and racism and inequality, but we can fight those problems. Whether or not that person calls himself or herself a progressive, they're with this campaign emotionally, and if we can tap that, we'll have the grassroots coalition we need to win this election, and I would love to be a grassroots governor that got there through a grassroots campaign. With public sentiment mobilized on the kind of values that I would identify as progressive, I think the legislature will be responsive. They will hear the voters, and just as they are with the casinos situation right now, something really wonderful is happening around this casino effort. We're going to be, I think, the first state where the voice of the people has corrected the problem of casinos. The first state. And that didn't happen with vast amounts of moneyed interests. No, the moneyed interests are on the other side. But nonetheless, there's a mobilization going on, a voice of the people that will turn the state back to what we should have, which is doing away with the casino law. That's the beginning of something, if you ask me. That's the beginning of a sense of empowerment on the part of people who love their communities and who are tired of feeling helpless and who don't want the power to follow the money all the time. They want to feel capable of controlling their destiny. Think of what we can do with that. Those same people will care about justice. They'll care about schools that do well for our children. They'll care about prison reform, which is being so destructive of the futures of so many people who need mental health services. I think that grassroots mobilization is really important. I think will affect what the legislature chooses to do.
And Don, I have to say, as a member of the legislature, I couldn't agree more with your vision about how you interact with the legislature to get a bold agenda done. And I think I agree also about the conversations that are happening given the discussion on casinos. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, as an executive, the one lesson I learned early on is you're never the boss. You may think you are, but you're not. And you either win support and hearts and minds, or you lose the game. And so I know no other way to lead than just to say let's talk. If you don't care that we have poverty, if you think it's okay that we don't have a satisfactory system of mental health care, if you don't share the values, well, then I will fight. I'm not as nice as I look, but I'm totally happy to find a common ground on values, and I will work with that.
That's great. The next question comes from Mary in Somerville. What will you do to reduce our carbon footprint and increase renewable energy in Massachusetts?
I would like Massachusetts to set a pretty bold goal here. I wonder if we could set out a trajectory to be the first carbon neutral state in the nation. Wouldn't happen during my tenure, but we could aim that way and start to move that way. It will take very strong and increasing pushes on conservation and energy efficiency. We're already rated, I think, 3 years in a row now, the best state in the nation with respect to energy conservation. We can do better. The stretch code in all of our communities, the Green Communities Act, working on expanding electric vehicle use, smart grid, energy efficient appliances. I think we can push the envelope on not burning things. That's the best way to save energy. The best way to deal with carbon is not to use energy at all, to minimize its use. Second is clean energy options, which we've done very well at. This governor's and this legislature has taken us into a new world of solar energy. With Governor Patrick, we had 4 megawatts of solar in the Commonwealth. We're headed for 1.6 gigawatts, 1,600 megawatts by 2020, and we can do it. I think we could probably double down on that. Then there is hydro. That's a bigger issue, and the governor here is going to have to really work hard at the regional level to get hydroelectric power down, which will come from Labrador and Quebec mainly. We have to work that out with the other states to which the transmission lines have to come. And the other part of clean energy for me is wind. Any progressive that cares about our carbon footprint better be pro-wind. The wind resource offshore, the offshore wind in Massachusetts is enormous. I think it's 5 gigawatts of potential support, potential power. That's about half of our total power needs if we were to develop it. So I'm going to be very big in supporting wind and wind power, which is, by the way, all of that's good. We have 80,000 clean energy jobs in the state now, 24% growth in the last 2 years. That's because we made a decision to go there. We need to keep going. Then there's the transitions of fossil fuels. I'm very glad we're closing down the oil and coal plants, Brayton Point and Salem Harbor, time to be gone. Mount Tom is going to close. We have Vermont Yankee going offline. There's some good moves going on to get at least coal and oil fired plants on. That puts us dependent on natural gas for a little while now. We're going to have to make a plan about how to use and then decrease use of natural gas here. My agenda would be very bold on all of these fronts. One very important element here is to internalize the cost of carbon. Right now, when you use fossil fuel, you're given a big subsidy to fossil fuel companies because the price of the fossil fuel doesn't reflect the externalities, the damage the fossil fuels are causing in healthcare consequences, in environmental cleanup problems, in Hurricane Sandy problems. We need to internalize the actual cost of fossil fuels into the price of fossil fuels, and that means a fee on carbon. And I support a fee on carbon in the state. The recent report by the REMI Consulting Group on modeling a $40 a ton carbon fee in the Commonwealth actually shows very favorable effects on our Commonwealth. It actually adds jobs, 10,000 jobs, because we don't do mining and oil drilling here. We're smart in invention. And it also will add to the gross state profit, about $500 million a year. So it's a good deal. And that's part of my platform.
Matthew in Beverly asks, what distinguishes your strategy to reduce gun violence from your primary and general election opponents?
I strongly suspect all of my primary and general election opponents hate guns and gun violence. I'm clear about that. It would be unfair to accuse them of otherwise. However, I disagree with the Attorney General on the one gun a month rule. I support Speaker DeLeo's recent rule, but it did not include one gun a month. I think that is a good place to go. It's a marginal effect, but it's a positive effect. I want to push guns and gun control very far in this state. We're already terrific. We need to be better. And I think we should be moving to smart gun technologies. And I think we have to treat this as a multi-state issue. So getting together the governors of New England and New York and talking about gun trafficking among states is just as important as anything we can do in the state. And fighting like the dickens to overcome at the national level the stranglehold that the NRA has on public policy right now. My good friend Vivek Murthy is nominated for Surgeon General. I know Vivek, he's fabulous. And here's the NRA stopping him because he said that guns can be a public health problem. The other thing I want to mention is, I'm a pediatrician. I've had kids involved in violence from age 12 using guns. Some of my patients, I remember, there are background circumstances to this. Violence in society doesn't just come from the presence of guns. It comes from inequality and despair and poverty and the lack of alternatives to a lifestyle that is violent. So we need to work on justice as an anti-violence idea. And we need to work on mental health care and support to people who get desperate and who may use guns. And we need to view this more holistically. And I'm as interested in a way in dealing with gang violence and inequity in our society as I am in the formal job, important job of gun control.
So the next question is from Anne Marie. Speaker DeLeo has suggested that the state's budget for next year has already account $1.7 billion in revenues from casinos, and without the casinos, there'd be a serious shortfall. What is your response to his statement?
Yeah, I don't think the revenue projections are that high, not 1.7 billion. Yes, we have the casino law, and there's some revenue plugged in there. But look, we made a mistake, and I was taught as a young person, when you make a mistake, you apologize and redress it. And we need to go back and fix this. Do we need revenue? Yes, we do. Let's go for healthcare reform, single-payer healthcare. Let's work really hard on tax loopholes and exemptions that are essentially giveaways to organizations, businesses that aren't contributing back to the Commonwealth. And I also want to work on a fair tax scheme in this Commonwealth. I think we should have a tax code here in which people at higher rates of income pay higher rates, and people at lower rates of income, lowest levels of income pay lower rates. We need a comprehensive approach to revenue. We've got to solve that problem. But to do it with the price of adding gambling addiction and DUIs and petty crime and harm to small businesses to our communities, no, that's not the right way to do it.
Antonia in Cambridge asks, what is your opinion on Common Core and high-stakes testing?
I've met too many teachers in this Commonwealth through this campaign year, in or near tears, about the loss of focus on the true needs of children and the autonomy and ability of teachers to give of themselves because of the swing of the pendulum so far to high-stakes testing and standards. I remember a teacher in Pittsfield, I just can't forget her. She'd been teaching for 30 years, near tears, because recently, whatever school she was in had laid off 2 librarians, had shut down the drama program, shut down the arts program, and added 2 after-school classes for MCAS preparation. The pendulum has swung much too far towards standards. I'm a student of quality. I've spent decades understanding the nature of real quality in organizations, and you do need some standards, of course, but the standards shouldn't be handcuffs. They should open the door to creativity and exploration. So we've gone too far. My view of making education better in this Commonwealth is really about investing in teachers, in their pride, their joy, their autonomy, their ability to grow and learn together. I've seen that work in Lowell, the wonderful leadership of the union president, Paul Georges, in concert with the then superintendent, Chris Scott. They got tired of all of this standardization and contingencies and rewards and punishments and said, why don't we focus on development instead? And in 18 months, the Merklin Elementary School in Lowell turned around from a level 4 school, really in trouble, to a level 1 school, a mentor school. And that wasn't done with standardization, that was done with development. And that's my bias. Common Core, I guess to be fair, it's a step forward. Common Core is a more inclusive view of what should be in a curriculum. It has to do with critical thinking skills. It's a little more inclusive than predecessor standards. But again, we've got to be very, very careful. In our schools, I want to make sure we're having arts and citizenship development and ethics and joy and innovation as core to what people are learning. So let's take this really carefully.
This question is from Paul in Cambridge. How do you feel about Uber? Is there a sensible resolution between taxis and Uber drivers?
I'm sure there's a sensible resolution, but if I have to declare my position now, I think Uber is an advance. We want an innovation economy where we welcome new ideas that change the game for the consumer, the citizen, the taxpayer. And I think there can be great taxi services, but I think Uber is an advance. And let the competitive world play this one out. But I think I welcome invention. Invention always is uncomfortable. There's a usual way to do it, and someone comes in saying, "Hey, I've got a different way to do it, and let's have it out." So I'm a supporter of it.
Let's see. This question comes from your super volunteers, Patrick Ty. What do you mean by all means all?
I've been looking for a way to encapsulate what this word progressive may mean as I want to use it. I think we should center ourselves in the Commonwealth, and I talk about compassion and social justice and human rights and equality. But there's something deeper here, and that is that nobody gets left out. Last night I was at a forum in which we were discussing problems of mental illness and behavioral problems and substance abuse in the Commonwealth. Don't leave those people out. We have a history with mental illness of marginalizing or denying or closing our eyes. No, they're in. They're us. I feel that way about the undocumented among us. They need driver's licenses. They need access to in-state tuition. They need to be treated like the people they are among us. They're with us. This morning I was at a forum about disabilities at the Perkins School. Terrible problems with people with disabilities today. Over 60% of people with disabilities are unemployed. They don't have jobs. They don't have work. They suffer, and that's not okay. How can we understand this basic idea that we really are together? And I was noticing before my convention speech the Pledge of Allegiance, which we said, with liberty and justice for all. And I think all matters. And that's what I mean. All means all. Find an area of exclusion and heal it. Come on in. We're together. That's what I think is at the heart of the progressive message.
See, next question comes from Sam on the North Shore. Why did you ask the Treasurer and Attorney General to debate you?
Well, we initially invited them to debate on casinos and gambling in the state. This is one area of disagreement. Both the Treasurer and the Attorney General have publicly said that they would not support repeal of the casino law, although now they say they're glad it's on the ballot, or there's a ballot initiative. We owe the public not the 3-minute stump speech on it or the 30-second exchange so-called debate. Why don't we go in deep here? Let's respect the public, take this very topical, very important issue, one of pretty significant consequence for this Commonwealth, and spend some time together with enough time to get into the depths. What is the evidence? Why do they think what they think? And why do I think what I think? And let the public experience a much more comprehensive dialogue about that crucial and very, very timely issue. I wish they would agree. I hope they may. But if not, I'll just spend the time I need then to explain why I've reached the conclusion I did a year ago that this is a bad move for this state. And I welcome the same kind of in-depth conversation around other issues that are crucial, jobs and job creation, really important for this Commonwealth, equity and performance in our schools, the way we're going to approach the environment, the way we want to deal with our correction system. It's so easy to campaign to end up at the superficial level with 1-minute rebuttals to 90-second statements, and I prefer mature, public, accessible dialogue, and that's why I put that idea on the table.
Okay, next question comes from Michael in Hingham. You are an avowed progressive, and I hear relatively little from you about jobs and job growth. What is your plan?
Thanks for the question. To me, a progressive agenda is a jobs agenda, and that's because there's so much synergy between this desperate need we have in the Commonwealth for economic growth and job growth. That is what all means all involves. You can come on into the economy and an agenda that restores equality in our Commonwealth. It helps no one at all to have 24,000 people in Massachusetts prisons at $42,000 a year who really need mental health services. Those people aren't customers or employees yet. They could be. We could restore them to health. That's good for business. The development of a clean energy and carbon-free economy could be the new biotech for this state. The ability to invest with relatively small amounts of state and local capital to help entrepreneurs start. We've seen the payoff. We can keep going on that. It doesn't help anybody else to have poverty. Poverty is a formula for despair and for non-participation in the economy. And raising the minimum wage, for example, gets people into an economic engine. Seattle is going to a $15 minimum wage. They're no fools. They're probably doing it for compassion, but also because it's smart economics. That money circulates, it goes around, and that's a progressive agenda. Inequality between men and women, paying women 77 cents on a man's dollar, means that women can't be as effective participants in an economy that generates growth and development. I have trouble thinking of a progressive issue that doesn't, in a way, help our economy build. Better transportation. This morning I was talking with a gentleman at the Forum for Disabled People who was just telling me about he wants to have a job, he wants to be in the economy, but he lives in a town in Massachusetts where the Regional Transit Authority goes offline at 7:30. The job he can get, he has to work till 9. Well, that doesn't help businesses. And back to single-payer healthcare, Medicare for all, as I said, I cannot think of a stronger job-creating strategy than that. A single-payer healthcare will put money back into government, the government can use for social services, and back into the pockets of owners of business and labor so they can be more participant in the economy. Overall approach to jobs, it's smart communities that are attractive to live in. It's an education system that's aligned with the needs of our economy. It's investing in innovations, especially ones that make us better places like clean energy. It's supporting worker rights and worker well-being, because if it's a great place to work, it'll be a better place to be a business person. And then getting out of the way of business as much as we can with lower healthcare costs and taking away regulations that don't help. That's a jobs agenda, and I embrace it fully.
The next question comes from Bob and Jean. They ask how much your proposals will cost and how they will be paid for.
I think a lot of what I'm proposing generates resources that can be otherwise devoted. Take prison reform, for example. We have $1 billion in new prison construction and capital plan to the state by 2020. We don't need to spend that money. We can save that money if we invest instead in mental health services, rehab services, vocational supports, pre-prison options. That yields money. That doesn't cost money, certainly in the midterm, if not right away. Real healthcare reform, reducing that 42% of the state budget, that generates resources. The agenda of a cooperative investment in children, where you surround kids with cooperative services when those kids are in difficulties, that's a money saver in the long run. A kid who hasn't been helped to get ready for school and into school is going to cost more money in social supports over that kid's school career. We know the data that out of the Strategies for Children study just last year, show that a kid who can't read in the 3rd grade is going to cost $300,000 or $400,000 more to support than one who can read in 3rd grade. Why not use 3rd grade reading readiness as a goal? But I think a lot of what we want to accomplish actually is it will yield resources for other investments. And I told you the revenue sources I would go after. It's healthcare savings, it's tax loophole closures, and it's a fair income tax regime in which we finally bite the bullet and say if you're wealthier in the state, you get to pay higher rates.
See, Don, this will be the last question. This might be my favorite question. It's from Mark. Why would a doctor who is at the top of his game, someone who's done more to improve healthcare in the U.S. than anyone else, who ran an agency with $1 trillion budget, who's been recognized by countries around the world for helping them improve their healthcare systems, why would he want to run for governor?
Well, 2 reasons. One is I'm really worried about the direction of the country with respect to the basic principles of human rights and custody of our future that I care deeply about. I think we're going in the wrong direction. Growing income inequalities, more marginalization of people who are more fearful, a public that is losing trust. That's not the country or the state I want to hand over to my children and my grandchildren. And some of this is just, when I was young and we were in the streets on Vietnam and civil rights, there was this phrase, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. It's pretty edgy, but I sort of feel like that. I just want to be part of the solution. I don't want to be a bystander with this. I think the other is that, I'm an executive, and I've spent my career solving big problems, making healthcare safer, working on chronic illness care, making communities more effective in prevention, big goals. Well, I think I have the skills to help this Commonwealth be a beacon around the kinds of goals that we really could achieve. And I would like to use those skills. And, as a doctor, I can work on health through a keyhole, the right medicine, the right diagnosis, the right conversation. But health is such a bigger idea. It's vibrancy. It's joy in communities, and we're going to have to work on everything to do that. It's not just healthcare that's going to matter. It's schools and roads and a proper attitude towards our environment. It's public safety. It all comes together. So I guess I want to try to be doctor to our well-being, if I can, not just to the individual at this point in my life.
Well, I've reached the end of Don's virtual town meeting. I want to thank everyone for joining this evening. And again, if you like what Don has said, please get involved in the campaign. Again, this is the strongest, most active grassroots campaign in the state, so please get involved. And I'm going to give Don the last word to close out.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, again, for your support and your help this evening. And I go through this whole campaign. My last word to you is please help. We're going to win this, but we'll do it through grassroots, and that is you and people you know and can influence. It has to do with your willingness to work. I hate to say that on a lazy summer afternoon, but work is going to matter now between now and September 9th, and between September 9th and November 4th. I need you to knock on doors, to talk to your friends and neighbors, to help us here in this headquarters in Worcester and other places that will be setting up for you to help. And we need financial resources. We need you to donate. If you haven't done it, please do. And find others to donate and help us get the resources we'll need to tell this story all over the Commonwealth. It's an exciting summer. We can win this.